good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Medhaswi, but you can also call me Medha. I'm a UX designer and researcher at an education company called Stride. I work with a small team of 5 people, and we work on a large number of projects together. Sometimes I'm designing a dashboard, sometimes I'm analyzing test results, sometimes I'm conducting interviews, and obviously spending a lot of time talking to stakeholders and negotiating, finding a middle ground. Um, 1 second. Today, we'll cover a little bit about how I went from my engineering background to being a UX designer, what helped me with my job search, and how I really found that footing, and mostly talking about stakeholder navigation and dev conversation. We'll have time for some questions at the end. I started off in engineering, and maybe that was because I'm from India, and I think a lot of us are just pressured to become engineers from our families, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being a part of the web dev scene. I used to work on a lot of cybersecurity and AI projects, and alongside my side hustle was social media strategy, and I used to have freelance gigs and contracts to help brands out with their social media marketing or just building a brand. When I came to New York for my master's, I was a wee lad. I was a baby, just out of college, knowing I wanted to do good. I want to make tech better. That was the only goal I had. And pretty much like you all, I was navigating through internships, unpaid or paid. And my journey, although it looks nice here in a nice, neat resume format, it was honestly more like this: very chaotic, very random. And I feel like I had this do it all mentality, and I still do. I like trying everything out and I want to do everything. And I'm sure you feel the same way at Pratt with all these courses that you have. You're like, oh my God, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do conversation UX. But wait, I don't have enough credits to also do emotional design. And I feel like that same chaos kept following me through Pratt. These were a list of the courses I took at Pratt, and I enjoyed all of them. But I also feel like I was just like, okay, wait, I don't know what to do. Let me do this. Let me do that. I come from this engineering background where this is all whole new ground for me. I really want to learn everything that I can. And it never felt like I had enough time for it. Um, but then it was towards the end of my second semester, I started to sit down and realized I did not have a cohesive story. I did not have a set of skills that I was working towards. My desire to do it all was no longer exciting because when people looked at me and my work, they thought I was directionless, aimless, and passionless. I was just an excited kid, and that was not good. And I like to call this phase the identity crisis. And I'm sure a lot of you have gone through it or are going through it, especially when you're trying to apply for jobs and internships and you don't have a lot of luck. I went through that and I didn't get an internship, so I even ended up going to Paris. It was like, okay, let me study art history. Well, what's gonna go? I have no regrets. Again, I enjoyed it all, and I truly love that I got what I wanted from my experience at Pratt. But then I was always also comparing myself, and it was very easy to compare. It was easy to look at someone's nice portfolio and wonder why yours isn't that way. It was easy to be in awe of people who got internships and people who were securing jobs, who had mentors, and I'm so lost. These were some of the things that helped me when I was going through it. And I wish I was more proactive. I get a lot of LinkedIn messages about, okay, how is this program? What courses do you suggest? What professors do you recommend? And I was never that way. So if you're already doing that, that's a good step. You are thinking and planning ahead. It's important to have fun. It's also important to balance it out. There's nothing wrong with exploring and seeing what's out there. That's how you learn. But you also have to find that balance. I did not build a timeline. I did not ask a lot of questions, and I learned it the hard way because I didn't even struggle because I was like, well, no one's getting an internship. I don't trust I will. But I wish I did. And it's important to ask more questions and build a timeline. For me, that looked like this. I had a 9 to 5 structure. I still have this as default on my calendar. So when I don't know what to do, I still have something I can do. You can take a screenshot of this if it would help you out. But then after this 9 to 5, I wouldn't touch my laptop. I was out with family, I was out with friends, I would go to the library, read, do something that actually mattered to me. And it's really important that you find that balance because you don't want to lose who you are. I feel like job search can be very taxing and you start losing your sense of self-esteem and worth. You don't want that to happen. Stay grounded, stay rooted. And second thing was, I did not know what to do. I'm just looking at people and seeing what they're doing. What were people doing that I wasn't? They were making their portfolios better. They were talking to mentors. They were connecting with people on LinkedIn. I remember sitting in one of my classes and looking into someone else's screen in front of me, and they had ADP list on. I've never heard of this. And I started looking in. I'm like, okay, what is this? I once saw someone with a massive spreadsheet with a bunch of LinkedIn links and like just tracking, okay, who did I reach out to? What I'm like, wow, I've never thought of that. If you're afraid to ask questions, you can still observe and learn. I copied all the things I did. I saw, okay, let me go on ADP list. Okay, let me start talking to people on network, go to networking events. And the trick is to reevaluate. It's not just to repeat and be aimless, but when you keep doing something, you realize, okay, I like this. Oh, I don't like this. Wait, this person made more sense, and this person did not. One second. Eventually, action creates clarity. You don't always have to start out with that clarity. You can pick it up on the way. And it's important to talk it out. It's a lot of talking. You don't have to broadcast it to the internet. You don't have to tell everyone that, oh, I'm suffering. Oh, I don't know what to do. But it's important to have a few friends or a circle that you reach out to. We had a class where everyone was eternally confused. No one knew what assignment to do, what the professor is asking for, and we bonded. At the end of every class, we would sit together and discuss. Eventually, we realized okay, we were all anxious, we're all scared, we're all confused, and it's okay. We can help each other out. We start pretending a little less. I've learned a lot from my friends. Like, I had a design savvy roommate who taught me so much about using layouts, auto layout, making my portfolio better. I was that roommate who taught them how to research better, how to simplify your words. Eventually, we all grew because we shared. And that leads to my next lesson, networking. I feel like we often hear this. You should network. You should be networking. Networking helped me get my job. But I feel like no one tells you what to do. Let me tell you the truth. Networking is just a corporate word for making friends. It's not about getting LinkedIn connections, it's about building trust. Now, that doesn't mean you should not go to networking events or that you should not be connecting with people on LinkedIn and reaching out because you don't know what will work for you. But definitely don't reach out to someone just because you want a referral from them. They know. In fact, there are times I have a slew of like in connections coming in, and I'm like, oh, maybe my company posted a new job. Because out of nowhere, I feel like people are reaching out to me saying, wow, your journey is interesting. I'm like, what is interesting about it? Be more specific. Don't just reach out to me because you want something from me. Because it feels like my job is just my identity. You are so much more than that. And I feel like you should value that. So I would recommend go to places that actually matter to you. I've met wonderful people at coffee shops. I was at a coffee shop and I spilled matcha on my laptop. I bonded with this girl who was like, I'm sorry. And then like we ended up building a nice connection and I'm helping her out with her website now. You never know where a connection can come from, but you have to be open to it. You have to build that trust. And you only really get that when you make UX a part of your identity. You have to be building projects. You often hear people saying, oh, no one is looking for a junior designer anymore. There's no early career designers. It's so hard to get an internship. And I will not lie, it is very hard. I feel like luck is a big factor. But if there's no opportunities, go seek them out. A lot of people might not realize it, that they need help for something. A lot of people think, oh, I can make a website, but offer services in exchange for learning. You might not be getting paid sometimes, but maybe they will pay for a Claude license. Maybe they will pay for a Webflow license, and you get to learn and experiment and grow and still get that experience on your resume. My journey was crazy. This looks chaotic because it was. I started off in marketing. Remember how I mentioned I used to do social media? I went from there, and in all these companies, I started asking, hey, can I help with the website? Or I started saying things like, hey, can I help with the analytics? Or, hey, can I help with the design system? And most of these were small startups and they really appreciated all the help they got. You wear a lot of hats, and that helps. I had someone who paid for my Figma seat. And I'm so grateful for that because then I also got the full, all the products in there. Eventually, this became, can you help us out with this? Can you help us with this? Because you see, trust compounds, it builds over time, and you have to prove yourself. This eventually becomes, can you help with someone else's project? Oh, someone I know is looking for a designer. Maybe you can help. And then you become the someone who can do a task. You become known for something because you've made it a part of your identity. Obsession is necessary because it's important to remember that most people hire you for something you've already done. In my case, I feel like, okay, in some random project, I've done a design system and that helped me get another job. In some other project, I did a chatbot that helped me get my other job. Of course, good leaders will recognize your potential. They will see that you've done something and you're able to do something. It doesn't mean you should only be applying to those jobs. But with the way the market is, it's an employer's market. They have all these options and they know they can find the right match. I also want to emphasize that your class projects have a lot of value. When I was a student, I feel like a lot of people did not take it seriously because it was just for their grade or it was just a project on their portfolio. But you're actually learning a lot of collaboration, stakeholder management, and you're making decisions and having to explain why. It's also important in the collaboration section because I feel like there are classmates that I work with who are so amazing that I would go out of my way to help them find a job. And there were also people who I've worked with who were not the best, who were not the most friendly, who were mean. And I don't know, maybe 10 years down the line, I would not feel comfortable referring them because I'm like, well, you were not a nice collaborator. Take your project seriously because you are actually building relationships with people. Your peers might not be of much value to you today, but don't treat them like that. They might be people who help you out later on. Don't, yeah, just treat your relationships with more value and respect. I got my current job through LinkedIn. It was a stroke of luck. Someone had liked a post that was looking, someone posted that were looking for a designer, and someone in my connections liked that post. And I looked at it and I connected with them and I presented, it was an education company, like I mentioned. So I presented one of my class projects. This was a project we did with CUNY. It was in the Projects in IXD class with Professor Hassan. And we were a small team again of 4, and we did an entire design process that, okay, from start to finish, stakeholder navigation. And this was a tough project because it was a legacy system. The website was there for 10 years. It was only one developer and only WordPress. It's been around for 10 years. Stakeholders did not want to change anything. And obviously, when you're working with designers and researchers together, you learn collaboration. I just saw this as, okay, I'm interviewing for an education company. I will present an education case study just to show, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I've worked with this before. What I did not realize was I was checking off all these boxes in that interview. This is this is just something I've taken from that case study. There was so much more that happened there, but they were looking for these, and I happened to check those boxes. And this is literally the same thing I do every day at my job. work on a legacy system. We have a lot of tech limitations. We have stakeholders who are to attach, and I have to collaborate with my team in an education space. I do have to say, this is not an easy process. I want to emphasize that it was a lot of luck. I really wish I could do more to help you out in this job search, but it's so random that I would recommend you try everything. Because I had thousands of applications. I think at a point it became meditative to just sit for 10 minutes every morning and click apply, apply, apply. I had 8 interviews, and actually none of them were through applications. They were through referrals or someone I know looking for someone. And I got one offer. And that one offer letter, like that sync was perfect for me. It was something I cared about and something I actually had experience in. And this is also what's happening in that job search right now. People are looking for these exact boxes. But like I mentioned before, good leaders will notice that potential and pass it forward. It's a little tough getting through HR sometimes because you have all these ATS and the job description restrictions. So update your resume for every job and apply and be more intentional with it. That's my main advice. Are we still good? Is everyone following around? Cool. Because I want to talk now a little bit more about what I do at work. I work as a UX designer and researcher in the web marketing team at Stride. I want to emphasize that this is a pretty large company that's been around for over 25 years. This is just my experience working at a corporation like this. And the advice I give may not really help you with working at a startup or working at a nonprofit, but I still hope you can get something from this because this might help you prepare for interviewing at such large companies that use legacy systems, have a niche market, and have years of research and data going into their product, and also years of UX debt. Okay. So I work in the web strategy team, and this is basically related to marketing. I report to marketing stakeholders and the head of marketing. Everything I do ties back to marketing metrics. My work is performance driven. How many metrics am I improving? Okay, is this design actually improving retention, conversion, engagement? That's what my stakeholders care about. And this changes based on what teams you're in. If you are situated in the development team, your workflow will be different. You will be more focused on Jira tickets, daily stand-ups, Scrum routines, and your language is different, your expectations are different. And similarly, if you're in the design team, you're mainly focused on branding, visual consistency, design systems. So it's important to look out for what department you're in because that will shape your expectations, your culture, the speed, and how you're proven as successful. Even when you're interviewing or you see a job posting, it might be nice to reach out and see what their department is like, what their values are, how will you be assessed, and how can you do better. At my company, we work across multiple products, and all these products have multiple PMs, there's different budgets, and there's scope. Because of scope limitations, I can't always jump on a website. If I'm assigned to the internal tool, I can't just go and help out on the main website. If I want to do something on the main website, it has to be in the approved scope. I can't go out of scope. There's so many limitations and things move very slow. There's a lot of dependencies because there's multiple teams involved. There's so many stakeholders that all want to review your work. There's release schedules that you need to follow and legacy systems. I keep emphasizing on the legacy systems because they are very restrictive. There's platform limitations. My biggest challenge is the platform limitation. I feel like I'm forced to work within a lot of constraints, and you have to try to make that experience better with all those limitations that you have. You don't have the same creative freedom. You can't just suggest an idea because that's going to break dev back end. You can't just suggest a button that's here to go all the way to the top corner. That might break something else. You don't know what's dependent on it. A lot of my job really just ends up pushing buttons inside existing systems. And I work on internal tools. It's boring, but it's important work. This is how my design process mostly is. You start the project, you ask questions, you find out what you're doing, why you're doing it, design a solution, test it out, reiterate, present it, hand it off. It's done. I wish this was that easy because there's all these people who come in, all these different limitations. Everyone wants to do something, everyone wants you to change something. I feel like at this point, I am no longer a UX designer and researcher, but I'm a pro button mover who asks too many questions. This is what the reality of UX is, especially because not everyone knows what you do. You're really integrated with product, you're integrated with dev, you're doing all these things, and you just become someone asking questions. And working with developers is very humbling. You realize very quickly what you don't know. And it's not even about ego, it's just language. And that's why I spend most of my time in meetings. I'm either spending my time in meetings or devs tell me something won't work, and then I have to change it. And then I need to analyze, okay, does this make sense? Is this hitting a goal? Is this hitting a metric? Am I being successful? Is this set up for failure? And very rarely am I actually designing something. Just bringing back this diagram to show you how intricate this can be, because it's not just these overlaps. There's all of this. You don't just design, you work across multiple products. And everyone has their own goals. There's one dev team that works on a different stack of tools. There's another dev team that works on a different stack of tools. One PM has one goal, another has different. And sometimes you want to say, okay, let me move this button there. And then another team comes in and says, you actually can't do that. It's a lot of, imagine you've made a design and then said, and everyone says it's good. And then 1 month later, they're like, actually, it's not good. Can you go redo this all over again? It teaches you a lot of patience and resilience. And you need to have that. You need to have that patience to go break things and do them again. And there's this language problem because how many devs will you speak to? How much will you know? And it's not even just talking to devs, right? Devs are speaking objects, opportunities, IDs created. And then stakeholders are talking about, okay, how is this affecting my conversions? How is this affecting revenue? And you're really in the middle. You have to translate these needs. You have to translate what each other mean to each other sometimes. You are translating these technical constraints into user impact. And you have to always remember to protect the user when you're doing this. Because it's not just about the user anymore, right? It's about balancing everything. It's a whole circus. And there's a lot of challenges, but due to our time constraints, I want to just talk about three things. You don't always know what's happening in engineering. You don't know what the devs are doing. And it's hard to expect things to happen. Again, the big part of this is asking questions. Ask questions. There's no wrong questions. And you must ask better questions and take notes of it. And sometimes dev might say, yeah, this will work, but it won't. And you don't know that. They don't know that because they have all this information that's just in their head. So sit with them, talk to them, ask for tutorials. Okay, I see that you're using Salesforce to build this component. How do you do this? Can I sit with you and see what you do? And document everything. We are more visual, we're more translators. Make a flow diagram. Okay, system diagram. This database sends it to this sends it to here. And then you can always clarify with them. Ask them, is this what you mean? Where am I missing something? There's always that back and forth, back and forth. Collaboration is key. Second thing is devs don't always speak design. These are intuitive for us. You're like, oh my God, why is this not all capitalized? Wait, where's the grammar in this? And it's very easy to judge devs. We're like, oh my God, they're so dumb. They're not. I feel like we work in two separate domains, but we're two sides of the same coin. You have to know that they know what works best in code. They have to ensure that things are not breaking. They have to ensure tech limitations are there. And they might just not have the same communication skills as you. So it's very important to be more specific. Give them more context and details always, even the space between two buttons, even if you've already told them, yeah, it's defined to be 8 pixels. Reiterate, put it everywhere because they're going through so many projects. They have to switch between code repositories, and most of them don't know Figma. They're already learning a new tool, and you have to be patient with them. Patience and resilience will take you a long way in building these relationships. And everyone is a designer. Everyone has ideas. Everyone has opinions. Everyone has priorities. And design is the easiest thing that people think they can influence. And you have to realize, although your role as a designer, you're doing a lot more than that. You're defending your user, you're defending data, and you're trying to find a balance. You can't just outright say, no, I can't do this. You have to try to find middle ground and explain trade-offs. Okay, I hear you. I see that you want this button colored red. But if we change this to green, we might have $1 million more because people think that's approved versus not. Just speak that language. I feel like when you're at Pratt, and even like in grad school, you learn a lot about process. How do you actually conduct user research? How do you fulfill responsibilities? You learn that craft, you learn critical thinking and some exposure to code, but nothing will teach you more than actually working with the dev team. And I think this is what most people look for. And I would recommend if you don't have that experience, start seeking that out. It will help you in interviews, it will help you stand out. You don't have to be an engineer like I am. Uh, but there are still some things that you can do to prepare. Build a foundation of business terminology and frameworks. UX is no longer about just advocating for users. We need to work on finding a balance between business and user goals because business doesn't exist without users, users don't exist without the business. It is a codependent relationship. Seek out questions like, okay, what are KPIs? What's agile? What are metrics? Ask more questions. What problem are we solving for the business and the user? I know a lot of you are graduating soon, but if you still have that opportunity, if you're still in your early semesters, these are some of the courses I'd recommend you take because it will help you get that. And this is in like it has a lot of value. I've personally not taken all of these courses. I've done the digital analytics course. I love it. I use those skills every day in my job right now. Second, learn basic dev and understand dev tools. You don't have to code, but you have to understand constraints. I really like that at Pratt you have to do the web dev course as a part of your foundation, especially if you don't have that tech experience, because you realize how hard it is to transfer your design into dev. It might be easier now with all the AI products and vibe coding, but I would recommend you still stick to the traditional way because in large companies like this, you do not have access to Claude. You're not allowed to use any AI tools sometimes. This is obviously different for startups, but keep that in mind and go with the intention of learning what this means more than, oh, I have to do something for my class. Again, a few recommended courses if you're able to take them. I have not taken any of these, but I believe they will give you a good foundation. And if you cannot take a course or you don't have any devs that you know that you can pitch a project to work on, reach out to them on LinkedIn, talk to them, ask them, okay, can you tell me what you do in your job and how you collaborate with designers? What challenges do you have with the designers? I asked these questions in my company when I started, and I feel like our collaboration has really gotten better. We went from two different planets to realizing we're all in this together and we have to find that common ground. Mostly document everything. Challenge yourself to document every single thing. We tend to think more implicitly, it's in our head. But not everyone has access to that same knowledge or that same understanding of something. You need to document why a decision was made, why it cannot be something else, what the user need is, what's the problem, what you're solving, what's the data. And document what decisions are made because when people are working on multiple projects, they tend to forget. Like, what do you mean we decided not to do this? Where's the proof? Send emails out, be like, okay, this is what I have from my meeting notes. Can you tell me if this is accurate? Ask and clarify. Asking questions is never wrong. It might seem like you're annoying someone, but people will appreciate that because eventually you'll learn whom to ask, what to ask, and gain that knowledge. I would recommend you start trying everything out in one of your next projects if you can. Ask more questions, be more intentional. I feel like you tend to not ask questions in a group project because you only have a certain time frame. And you're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't reach out. Maybe we shouldn't. And try to work within the constraint. Try to set up a call with the dev. Ask them, what do you do? Show me what you do. Show me what your limitations are. Because they'll say, yeah, we're open to anything. But that's not true. You can't just design something that won't work for them. Force yourself to have constraints. Maybe challenge yourself, right? Uh, I see Roshni and Merlin here. So I'm like, okay, imagine you both worked on separate projects and be each other's stakeholders. Just come up and be like, oh, I see this design, I like it, but actually we can't do this anymore. And then see how you work with that challenge. That's how you will grow. And that gives you experience. You're like, have you ever worked with have you worked with constraints before? It gives you a story to tell. Actually, I have. Maybe not in a professional experience, but in a personal project. This happened and I did this. People care for that experience and how you articulate things. In interviews, they're looking for someone who can collaborate and fit with the rest of the team. In the end, the best UX designers are not the most aesthetic. They are the most aligned with the rest of the teams, the rest of the company, with user needs. Your goal is to reduce friction between teams. You have to turn all these thoughts and ideas into something more legible. You have to turn ambiguity into clarity. And with the UX foundations that you're building at Pratt, if you give yourself some time to actually learn more about dev and business terms, you will become indispensable. You will be sought out because you speak three languages. So, just to sum it all up, plan intentionally, plan your timelines, plan your time, plan your goals better. And if you feel lost, just sit and observe what everyone else is doing and repeat them, learn from them, reevaluate. Build real relationships. Don't just seek out people because you want something from them, but have people that you can see having in your life for 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, people who you know will have your back. Do work that builds trust because this is related to your identity. You can mess up. It doesn't mean you can't make mistakes, but it's also about how you deal with it, how you respond to failures, how you respond to challenges, how you respond to constraints. And I always heard this when I was in grad school. Whenever I spoke to someone, they say, keep learning, ask questions. But working for 2 years now, I see it. And this is the reality. If you're shy, if you're introverted, if you're afraid, put that aside if you can. Start practicing, ask questions, maybe in the mirror, ask it to your friends, do it with your trusted circle, but keep learning. Don't stop learning. I feel like you're not showing your skills as a good designer if you think you know everything. A part of our process is being curious. So be curious. With that, I know we're also almost at time. So thank you for listening to me. If you'd like to connect with me, you can scan that QR code, find me on LinkedIn, send me a text. I don't like putting my email out there, but if you are on this calendar invite, you'll see it, and you can send it to me. But yeah, open for any questions that you have.
Thank you so much for that. It was absolutely wonderful and so insightful. Yay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining. So if you have any questions, please, you can either drop it on chat or unmute yourself. So anything works.
Guys, ask questions. That was the whole point. And that's also something I'd recommend actually. Um, Even when I go to networking events or talks, I try to force myself to ask a question. That's how you show that you're genuinely interested and you've heard what's been said. My job search to getting my job. I started applying January of 2024. I had a nonprofit job that was part-time and paid me something when I graduated. So by May or June. But this job I got it October. So almost 8 months of just looking and applying and reiterating my portfolio. One more thing that helped was when I started off, I had a Notion portfolio. And when I interviewed for this job, I actually did not get it. They said, sorry, we gave it to someone else. But later on, they reached out to me again and said, actually, I think we have something for you. So even when you give interviews, don't feel defeated. Maybe you're going into someone's, oh, let me reach out later pile. Don't let it question you, or like, don't let it bring you down. And then what happened was I changed my portfolio in the 2 months or like 1 month between my interview and them reaching out again. And they saw it was very clear that, oh, she has growth. I saw the Notion portfolio and I see this better portfolio. They saw that I can provide results. Thanks for your question, Carla. I had two interviews. This was again, like I said, very straightforward. Uh, a chat with the leads, showing them my work, and then actually talking to the design team and seeing if I'm a good fit with them, if I'm able to collaborate with them. Honestly, just a lot of portfolio presentations. I presented the same thing twice, and I actually was fumbling in my second one because it's one person was already there. They saw the same thing, and I'm like, am I doing the wrong thing? Should I present something different? But that's okay. I'm like, it's gone. I'm not getting this job. But I was very surprised that I did. But it's different for every company, I'll say that. This is just my experience and it changes. Yeah, Merlin.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing what Carla just asked, like a lot of like portfolio presentation or case study presentations. I've heard like mixed reviews about people just saying, showing their portfolio out there and just talking about it and going through it.
Don't
But
show
a
your
lot of people
portfolio.
like,
Do not show your portfolio. I would recommend putting your portfolio very generic.
okay.
It just does. In my portfolio, I have things very simple. It's just there because I also know a lot of people are just looking at it for 30 seconds. They're just looking at it and trying to decide if this marks something off, and then they will go into it and look. Before your interview, they are looking at your portfolio. They are looking at your resume. You have to show them something different. And when you present a slide deck, a case study like that, you have the opportunity to really customize it for what you think they care about. I spent 6 hours researching this company before I did my interview. And that really helped me cater the language I was using, understand what they care about, and present that. You can have a basic slide deck. I think I had like a 25, 30 slides deck ready as a template that I kept editing for every interview. And the case studies that you're working on at Pratt, those are extremely important because you can just convert that and reiterate them for everything. And I'd say document all your projects, every single thing you did, because you can take different things and put them. You might have worked on the design system, but you might have an interview for a researcher. You can talk about how you tested that design system instead. Make a case study from that. A lot of my time went in preparing these decks.
Mm. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Think there were a few questions that came up during the when people were registering. I'll ask
Yeah.
one of it. I think you touched upon this as well a little bit. So, how much of your work is design and how much is research? Do you use AI as a part of your workflow when designing? I think you were mentioning about sometimes not being able to use AI. So, how is the whole scene now changing? So, that was one of the questions.
We don't have an AI policy. We are not allowed to use AI, so we don't do that. And because I'm a designer and a researcher, I do divide my time. When I'm needed to design, I go into design projects and have to research, I have to go into research. A lot of context switching, and that's not always the case. Like we have people on our team who are just researchers. They only do research. There are people who are only designers and their most of their job is designing, But designing is also just clarifying a lot of things. Most of my time is meetings.
Got it.
But I think the most important thing is making sure people know that you're there. Like we're like, please ask us questions, devs, please ask us questions, please, please. And in the beginning it was, but now we're at that stage where they feel comfortable to reach out to us to just ask questions. Yeah. Anything else?
We have a minute, guys. Any other questions?
Hey, anything about, I mean, anything general about moving from a service company into a product company?
Again, I feel like you really have to find what your transferable skills are and know how you can present that language between departments. Again, it's all about that departmental knowledge. A lot of it is knowing that language.
I think the main problem for me would be statistics and like showing metrics about like, this much. Usually like in product companies, you have like, I caused a 25% improvement in retention and stuff like that. But in services companies, the only thing we got was like not user feedback, like stakeholder feedback. And we didn't
That's
have any metrics. Infosys is a company, by the way.
Good question. And I feel like especially even for projects at Pratt, you don't have that kind of impact. Maybe I could reach out to one thing we recommend at Pratt is okay, reach out to your client a few months after and see what happened with that. Even if it's do you mean statistics to put on your resume kind of a
Yeah.
thing to show that impact? On your resume, you want to show numbers. It can be, oh, I conducted 25 user interviews. That's still a number.
Hmm.
It's that number is really just to get through that ATS filter to show that you've done something. But you don't want to also bloat it up and show something because when an actual manager looks at it, they will know. And that is bad for you. So don't just try faking numbers. But you can also put expected. Oh, this design is expected to have 25% increase in conversions. Because you probably have that when you're defining your problem. What is your problem? What is your solution doing? Maybe it could help going ahead to start thinking or asking your stakeholders what metrics they care about. What is this supposed to change? Because they might not tell it to you, but they care about metrics. It might not be KPIs, it might not be analytics, but they have their own some other language for it. Thank you for that question. I know we're at time and I have to jump to my meetings. Thank you so much for having me here. Again, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or you have my email in that Zoom invite. Thank you and good luck. I really hope all of you find jobs and are happy with the jobs you get. And let me know if you need any more help, especially with the case studies and stuff. I'm happy to maybe do another presentation sometime or just chat with you and help you out with those.
Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
all for
you.
joining.